Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. So, I've just come back from the post office picking up these two things. These are the last two tips that I wanted for my new soldering station. So, it's time to finally do a video about the goddamn thing. So, this right here is the main piece. It's the AiXun T3A, otherwise known as the station. If I use that terminology ever again, which I probably will, since it has basically become the only way to refer to this thing on the JackNet RGB Discord. But yeah, so officially this is the T3A. If I ever call it the thing, then yeah, you know this thing is what I mean. So this is a 200 watt soldering station. It's from AliExpress. And you can find it there for around 120 euros if you want the T245 handle, which is the one that you should get. Yeah, it comes with 3 tips included. Those are the 3 on like the left side here. These are not great. You do probably want to buy some genuine JBC tips like these, or this one, or the one that's currently in it. Because the included ones are kind of bad. Like they are okay for general soldering purposes, but both I and other reviewers notice just that they're just kind of like a little bit weak. The heating element in them doesn't seem to be all that great. Yeah, and you know, genuine JBC tips are kind of expensive. These two were like about 70 euros. The other two were also around 70 euros. So that adds quite a bit of price to your soldering station, but the main point is you get a 200 watt soldering station and a T245 handle. Now this is not a genuine JBC T245 handle, but the only thing you really care about is that you have the genuine tips, which this thing works with just fine. Because yeah, like the entire thing is basically sort of a re-engineered JBC soldering station. And yeah, but like for 120 euros or local equivalent, because a genuine JBC soldering station, well, if like one of these tips is like between 35 and 50 euros, depending on what kind of tip you want, you can probably guess how much the stations that JBC makes cost then. And since the station's basically just used for delivering power to the tip, because the tips have the heating element integrated into them, well, you can pretty easily cheap out on like the station part, but the tips you want to have the genuine ones. So yeah, like many reviewers have given this thing a very good review, and I'm gonna do the exact same thing. This thing is amazing. It is so much stronger than my old iron. Like my 2 old soldering irons. I have a 75 watt iron for general soldering, and then I have a 150 watt iron, which I basically only used for e-powering. Yeah, and those were just like straight to mains voltage irons. They had very, very cheap and crappy tips. Like I have one over here, like this is one of the tips from the small iron, like literally just a piece of copper you put on the iron. It doesn't have an integrated heating element. It takes like 2 minutes to heat up fully, which if you add all that time up, if you like swap your tip a couple times in a session, you can very easily spend like a lot of time waiting for the goddamn thing to heat up, which isn't a problem with this. Like, just to demonstrate, I'll turn it on, and there we go, we're at 400 degrees. That fast, like, it is on. It is running. So yeah, it is really, really goddamn fast at heating up, and just generally it's a really nice station. Like even like for cheap Chinese crap, it has a pretty good feel to it. It's a fairly high quality feeling unit. Like yeah, like you put your tip in this, on like your handle, you can change your temperature here. Like if I turn it back on again, you can like, you know, you see like the set number, it's gonna settle down to that. So like it's gonna do to 415, and if I turn it back down, done at 400, like I think the stock temperature is like 350, and you can see it's coming down to that as well. But I have it at 400. Pretty much everyone else has it at 400 too. But yeah, like, so you change your temperature that way. Like, you have this display, which just shows you your temperature. And some other things like ambient temperature, apparently, how long you've been working on it, the voltage supplied to the tip, I guess. These two buttons, like, there's a menu, there's a few extra things that, but we don't really care about that. Like, I don't really use any of the extra functions of the thing. I just turn it on, and then, you know, I start soldering, which I should probably turn it back off. Yeah. And if you want to take a look at the tips, so this right here is one of the tips that I use. This is what I mainly use for e-powering. And yeah, so you can see there's two metal contacts right here, which is where the power goes into it. And then this little part where it's like slightly thicker, that's where the heating element is. And then you have the big tip, which is what gets hot really quickly, as you can see by how it has discolored. Yeah. This technically is meant for BGA soldering, but this is like a really big one. This is a smaller one. Like, yeah. This is a smaller one that I'm actually gonna use for like memory chips and stuff. This one's like more like for GPU chips, but I don't really rebuild GPU chips. I don't have something good enough to actually solder those. I use this mainly for e-powering. Like, this is the tip that I made the GTX 980 with. That's how I attached that giant copper piece for vCore. I just use this thing, and yeah, that's basically it. The station does come with this holder. There is a newer version that comes with a more fancy holder. It costs about 30 euros more from what I've heard, but like, I'm cheap. I got the cheap handle, so like, I just have this thing and you put it in. This tip doesn't really fit, which is kind of a design oversight. They fixed that in the newer one. In the new thing, but yeah, if you have a normal tip, you can just like rest it in there like that. Other tips go in there, and then you have like a sponge. There's one supplied. This is just my old sponge that I just put there, and that's basically it for the thing to set it down on. Like, way better than my old iron. My old iron was just on the desk somewhere, and yeah, so like, there's not much fancy things about this. It is just a really good value, high performance soldering station. And I think I'm just gonna demonstrate something. I wanna actually have the right tip on it already. So let's put the power unit somewhere off to the side. I'm gonna unbox these two at the end of the video. And let's get a graphics card. So let me get my chair, squeaky chair. Yeah, so this right here is a GTX 480. This is the one 480 where I like really went ham on it and modded like everything on it. And then in a session it died. Not big surprise. I bought this thing as dead. Pretty much all my 480s, like my reference cards, I buy them as dead to eventually turn them into e-powers. But like, you know, they're just 480s. Pretty much every single dead 480 is dead because of a memory module. I do the thing that I always say you shouldn't do. I heat gun them and then they work again for a bit. I do it because they're 480s, because I don't care. They're essentially disposable. And yeah, this one was like apparently good enough for me to bother modding it, but you know, because it's a heat gun card, it dropped dead again. And yeah, like, you can't just keep heat gunning things. They will stay dead at some point, and this thing is properly dead now. So yeah, it's basically a perfect candidate for showing the station, because I just want to show how powerful this is. So this tip that I'm using right now is the same size as the small tip on my old iron. The one that I just showed you, this one, is about twice as big. One of the new ones that I'm going to unbox is a replacement for that one. This is the small tip that I basically only ever used. Like, on the old iron, I used this size of tip for volt modding, cap modding, and that's it basically. Like, any big soldering, even like some bigger capacitors, do not work on my 75 watt iron with this tip. And I just want to demonstrate the concept of don't like that cap, it's gone now. Just like that. No preheat, no flux, just you put the iron down on it, you put it a little bit, and it's off. Like, it's that easy. It is really just that easy. Like, these input caps right here, these are soldered onto the ground and the 12-volt power plane, and they also just come right off. Admittedly, they're just capacitors and not like giant copper pieces. Like, I don't have any e-powers that I want to disassemble. I would show you that, but like, the fact that this thing is just like, this card is cold, it's at room temperature, it's not been preheated, I'm not using, well, I guess there's some residual flux from when I first soldered these on, but like, it's that easy. And it's also that easy to put them on there. It's just, you just need to be a bit more precise when you want to attach them so that you like don't bridge anything. But like, this thing gets hot enough that you can just do it. It is such a nice feeling to just be able to just like, yeah, how about we remove that cap? How about, I don't like the cap being there. Now it's gone. It is so nice. Like, don't like the volt mod anymore? Gone. It's that easy. It is that easy. And yeah, I wish I had something. Actually, I do have something to demonstrate. I did a short on this. So this this used to have an e-power strap to it. This is the 680 that I tested my copper plate e-powering technique on. This 680 has a problem with the memory. Like, it's a bit weird. I tried to diagnose it, but like, neither the memory controller nor any memory chip seems faulty, but for some reason, if you run anything on this thing that needs more than 500 megabytes of VRAM, it will always crash. I don't know why. I tried disabling memory channels via BIOS mods, didn't do anything, no matter what channel. I even tried just like with one channel active at a time. Every single channel was faulty. I don't know what's wrong with this, but it runs GPU Pi. Yeah. Anyway, so this thing has a bunch of solder on it. So let's pull our tip. It's still hot, that's why I'm not touching it with hands. But let's get the big tip. The big one. Now I need to be careful that I don't burn my laptop bag that I have as background here. Yeah, if you wonder why I have this, it's because like the desk is a pretty light color and the camera tends to just turn everything that's slightly darker, like a GPU PCB, completely black. That's why I have a dark background. Anyway, so let's turn this tip on. It's heating up, it's heating up. These, I don't know if you can see them. No, they're not gonna flow, but you know, it's evidently active. And yeah, so we're working again without preheat. We're working without flux, and I'm just gonna go at this thing. Like, it just melts it. It just melts everything. Like, you can see why I love this tip for e-powering things. It's just that strong. Like, just, yeah. And the nice thing about this thing is, because this is actually temperature controlled, because this has an actual soldering station and doesn't just like plug straight into like AC voltage, it has actually functioning proper temperature control. So like this doesn't, well, when it heats up, wow, the PCB gets really hot. Wow. Wow, the backside got hot. Yeah, I mean, 200 watts, right? Anyway, like, because this has an actual temperature control and doesn't just dump all 150 watts like in terms of my old iron into the thing, it doesn't actually get hot enough to do what you see here. That's power plane. That's gone. That's the actual copper power plane just destroyed and gone. And as you can see, I can go at this tip at it as you want. It's not gonna keep eating it, because this thing will not go above 400 degrees. Because it's actually temperature controlled. So it's strong enough, it has the 200 watts to like dump enough heat into it to just like melt solder, like this amount of solder, but it's not actually so hot that it's just gonna eat your power plane, which was a huge problem with my big iron. Which is, yeah, that and the iron tip just being goddamn giant were like one of the main reasons why I didn't do e-powers for a while, and I'm now doing like a lot of e-powers again. But yeah, like, it's so fun to watch. It's just like, it doesn't show as well on camera, but like you can see how it becomes like a little bit more shiny. That's like when the solder's liquid. And I can't hold the card anymore. The area around the core is getting really hot now. So yeah, I think that's a good enough demonstration about how powerful this iron is. So let's turn it back off. And yeah, is there really anything else to show? I guess we can unbox the new tips. The new ones that I just picked up. So yeah, these are basically just a bigger and smaller version of the tips I already have. So like, this one is my general purpose tip. Like, it is actually strong enough to do smaller e-power connections as well. It's just sometimes you want a slightly bigger tip for just, you want to just solder bigger things, like a bigger copper strip, and you want to just uniformly heat all of it. I wanted a bigger tip, that's this. So you can look these up on JBC's website. They have a name like this thing's. It's a bit warm, but I can hold it. Yeah, so this thing is a C245 770, and this is a C245 908. They're essentially the same thing, except that the 908 is twice as wide as the 770. And then this is a C245 914, and the really big one, that's probably still too hot for me to touch, this one, that's a C245 913. So this is the 13, this is the 14. Also again, same idea. This one's the same thing, just slightly, like, slightly smaller. So I can actually do like memory chips with it. So let's put that back in. And we can unbox all new tips, take a look at them. I do sadly have the OEM packaging. They usually come in like these slightly more fancy plastic packages. The included ones actually came in them, like knockoff versions of them. But the website where I bought these, I got the tips pretty cheap, and well, this is probably one of the reasons why they were so cheap. They are OEM versions and not retail versions. But yeah, so yeah, this is the, this is the flat tip. So they're both intended for the same use case, it's BGA soldering, but the smaller one is actually gonna be usable for memory chips, whereas this big one, is intended for BGA, but I use it for e-power, like big copper plates when e-powering, and the small one, well, yeah, that fits on like the BGA array of a memory chip. So if ever, like, I actually wanna seriously attempt the resoldering memory chips, I can just, do the BGA like this on the memory chip, whereas the other one's like just way too big for that. And I'm gonna run out of space for all the tips. Yeah, and then this one again is just, a general purpose soldering tip, but bigger, like, like this thing. They're like pretty much exactly the same size, except, cheap one, really shitty cheap one. Like this, all this corrosion, yeah, it looks really corroded, like. And I mean, I didn't use the new one nearly as much yet, and it does have some discoloration, but like this thing is nowhere near as corroded, because the cheap tip already looked like that after using it a few times. Yeah, so this is just a bigger general purpose tip. What this could be potentially used for is like, capacitors like this, because this is going to be able to touch both legs at the same time even better than the other one. Let's actually test that. Let's just run it. Just put it in properly. There we go. Turn the thing on. When you turn them on for the first time, they always like start to smoke a little. I don't know if the camera's gonna be able to catch it. But yeah, that is smoking a little. Whee, that's quite a lot of smoke actually. And you can already see how it's like discoloring slightly from the heat. Yeah, it's like more brown now than it was before. Anyway, so we're up to temperature. And the well, this new white one is gonna be even better at just, don't like that capacitor, now it's gone. It's just, yeah, like that's even quicker. Like, yeah, so let's just reclaim all the capacitors from this thing. This card's gonna become an e-power soon. Not that I have a shortage of capacitors. I do actually have a shortage of these input filtering capacitors. I don't have a shortage of output filtering capacitors. This one's actually kind of hard because it has the cable on it. But yeah, so yeah. I guess that's gonna be it with the demonstration of the AiXun, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a Chinese company. I do not speak Mandarin. It's the T3A. You can look it up on AliExpress if you want. I give this thing a recommendation. It is, like, not including the cost of the tips, which, you know, are genuinely quite expensive. The station itself, for 120 euros, you know, like, even the beginner irons I have, both together, like my small and my big beginner iron together, are already at around that price. And this thing being able to take like tips that can do all the jobs that both of those irons can do, the station itself is worth it. It's just that this has the extra cost for tips. But again, this station has such a good performance. And you know, because it's a T245, it's a knockoff T245 handle, but it does work with the genuine tips, as you can see. It's just fine. You can take any JBC tip, like they have hundreds of tips available for whatever you want to do. You can just stick it into this thing and it's gonna work. So I very much give this thing a recommendation. So if you want something for, you know, soldering anything, like, you know, cap modding is kinda easy. You've seen how it handles this thing. Like, yeah, I've built the GTX 980 e-power with this thing. So, yeah, I've already done pretty nice things with this, and it's a lot of fun. It's so much easier to work with than my old irons. Like, my old irons needed preheat. Like, just to reiterate, none of this had preheat or flux on it. My old irons with preheat and mountains of flux sometimes just still were not strong enough for certain places when the power plane's just really, really big. This thing is just gonna go right straight through that. So yeah, this thing, yeah, let's put it like this. This thing gets my recommendation. This is a very, very nice soldering station. And yeah, like the station itself, not even that expensive. And there was even a reviewer, I forgot, was it EEV Block? I don't know. One of the reviewers took this thing apart, and even the internal components of this thing is like pretty good design apparently. You can update the firmware using the USB port. It has like a bunch of extra features, like you get like a ground cable with it, so if you need to ground something. Then there's like a DC output on the back as well, and it can do a bunch of extra things that I haven't gone into here, because, you know, I'm not a soldering iron reviewer. I mostly just wanted a very nice high quality soldering iron that can take those really, really wide tips, because I wanted to eventually try, you know, memory chip reballing, and also just wanted this tip is amazing for e-powering. So yeah, I think it's a long enough video now. Yep, 24 minutes. And yeah, so thank you for watching. I like this thing. I give this thing a recommendation, as I've said 4 or 5 times now. And until next time, goodbye.